Okay, so hello everyone. We're gonna get started. My name is Nathalie Beltran Vargas, and I'm an environmental science major, and I'm a junior. I'm also the vice president for the Scientists Embracing Equality and Diversity Club, and I'm gonna pass it to our co-president, which is Danielle, and she's gonna be introducing herself now.
Hi, I'm Danielle Fernandez, and I am a junior in the sports biology major, and as she said, I am the co-president of S.E.A.T.
Hi, my name is Willow. I am a senior in health sciences, and I am co-secretary of S.E.A.T.
Hi everyone, I'm Charisse. I'm a volunteer tonight.
Hi folks, I'm Felicia Lundquist. I go by she, her, hers, they, them pronouns, and I'm the Director of Multicultural Affairs, also serving as a volunteer to help out tonight.
Okay. So we have a few objectives going in, and we want to just share these out so that, if people have thoughts, you can feel free to share questions or thoughts in the chat with me directly, or have dialogue in the chat, and then we'll be able to kind of keep track of those things for when we get to a Q&A point or pauses for discussion. So S.E.A.T is going to be covering what environmental justice is and what environmental racism is, and the various types of pollution, including water, air, and soil. They're going to be talking about the father of environmental racism, the sort of global issue of environmentalism as it relates to race, the role of mass action, the role of the privilege of the people in this room to engage in mass action, and sort of, action steps, what we can do from here. So feel free to use the chat to engage a little bit, and I'll turn things, actually, I think we're moving into a game now. Okay, so this is a little game that I think Dr. Fowler put together for us, which is awesome. So if you have a piece of paper and a pencil or writing utensil, challenge yourself to see, where you're at. What do you know about this stuff? Can you match these locations around the country with these numbers 1 through 6, which are specific types of pollution or environmental crises?
Okay, so to begin, this is a quote from Dr. Robert Bullard, who is a father of environmental justice. And one of the interviews that he did, he said, "America is segregated and so it's pollution." So when I was researching and thinking about this topic, I was wondering why and what is the meaning behind this quote. And one of the things I found out is that climate change, we know that is one of the biggest issues we're currently facing. And also that it is directly related to equity. And the thing is that the people who pollute the most is the people who is less likely to deal with all the issues. And I wanted to open this to everyone. And if you can think of an example of how America is segregated and you want to share your opinion, please feel free to do so and unmute yourself, or you can throw it in the chat for us. So if you can think of an example of how America is segregated right now, please share it with us.
America is segregated. One person wrote in the chat through education and housing, which is very true with redlining in different communities and stuff like that.
Another thing that I can think of is that, again, I was reading a lot and doing a lot of research about this, and there was one story in particular that kind of struck me the most, and it was a story from a lady from Africa town in Louisiana, and she was saying that she had 7 siblings, 5 of them passed away, and 4 of them died from cancer, and she's a cancer survivor. So the reason is that they live next to toxic sites, because this town is known for the production of paper, and there's a lot of chemicals involved in these processes. So I had a lot of emotions when I was listening to this, because imagine that you lose a lot of your family members and siblings because you're next to a toxic site. This is just an example of how America is segregated and how marginalized groups have to deal with things like pollution. And this is a clear example, and there's plenty of other examples, like low-income communities are the target of pollution. And if you guys, again, have any other ideas, please share it.
I can read some of the ones that are being shared in the chat. One person wrote locations of facilities. Another person wrote environmental racism. Another person wrote the church hours were the most segregated times. There was also mention of food deserts and access to grocery stores. And then when another person wrote lack of regulation and where companies can dump waste end up in lower income areas in vulnerable communities, increasing the amount of health consequences. Those are just some examples that people have shared in the chat.
Okay, so is anybody else willing to share?
So I will. For segregation in itself, we are, whether we like it or not, this is the fate of today's reality. We are segregated by our race, the way we identify ourselves, our religion or lack of one, as well as the communities we live in, whether they're in the city or a certain part of town. We are all segregated no matter what. And we will, every single day, we try to change it. Even on this campus, we try to change that. And it will continue to be a force that needs to be reckoned with. We have to continue to realize that we are segregated and how to change those issues that we face. And not necessarily me, because I am white, but the people of color that they face. Because they see the harsh side of the world more often than I will. So taking my privilege and realizing that is a step that everyone really needs to take.
Thank you, Danielle. So another important thing is that we know what is environmental justice, and the Environmental Protection Agency defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. Fair treatment means that no population, due to policy or economic disempowerment, is forced to bear a disproportionate share of the negative human health or environmental impacts of pollution or environmental consequences resulting from industrial, municipal, and commercial operations, or the execution of federal, state, local, and tribal programs and policies. Okay, another important term that we need to know is what is environmental racism. So it's pollution-based racial discrimination. This term has been around for a long time, longer than we think. But its popularity began in the 1982 when in North Carolina, 120 million pounds of PCBs were dumped in an African American community. So many people are thinking, what are PCBs? So PCBs are man-made organic chemicals consisting of carbon, hydrogen, and chlorine, and they're known to produce byproducts that are very harmful to us, like and then they also cause many diseases like anemia, for example. So we need to be very careful where these things are being dumped. And these people were protesting because, again, they were the target. Again, marginalized for communities were the target of all these byproducts and things. I saw someone raising a hand. If you want to unmute yourself, feel free to do so.
Sorry, Natalie, that was because I asked people to raise their hand if they had ever heard of environmental racism before, just out of curiosity. So that's where you saw that.
Okay.
And you can use the reactions too. I know there's in the participants you can raise the hand, but also there's these great reactions that you all can use too if you agree with things that Natalie is saying or answering questions that Sharice is putting out there.
So this is Dr. Robert Bullard. He's a role model to me because he evaluates the intersectionality of environmental issues and the health, our health. And he was born on December 21st in 1946 in Alabama. Here we can see some of the work that he's done. He's written 18 books talking about racial issues and social injustices. And he's a former dean of the Barbara Jordan Michael Leland School of Public Affairs at Texas Southern University, professor of urban planning and environmental policy, founding director of the Environmental Justice Resource Center at Clark Atlanta University, and co-founder of the HBCU Climate Change Partisan. And he's done more than this. He's always protesting and using his platform to do good things for others and advocate for others. So that's why I feel like he's a role model to me. I'm an environmental science major, and this is what I wish to do in the future, and I hope that you all gain some knowledge from this.
So why does race matter when we speak about these environmental issues? Those who come from minority groups, such as African Americans, Hispanics, and Native Americans, they're more likely to live in poverty, and with this poverty comes pollution. Pollution tends to be in areas with high populations of minority groups, and it's not them that actually causes all this pollution. It's usually white people. And white people experience 17% less air pollution than what they actually produce. So they don't always see the effects of what they cause. Every single day, we go about our lives and we don't really think about this. And I know it probably doesn't cross many people's minds. And if you're here today listening to us speak, and if you're white, I hope you really take all this in and keep yourself in check and keep those around you in check. Because it is very important to, maybe not you at the moment, but it could be you, and it could be your friends and the people around you. So to put in perspective of how crazy important this all is, a professor from the University of Minnesota, Jason Hill, found through research that there are more deaths at 130,000 per year from air pollution than from murders and car crashes combined, which is like pretty mind-blowing. There we go. So this is a specific example of pollution, and I don't know if probably most haven't really heard of the Standing Rock Reservation and the Native Americans' fight to preserve their land. But in 2016, they were trying to dig pipelines across their land. And it just shows the disrespect that people have for them and for their land when our ancestors were the ones that invaded this country or their land before. And it just shows that if we can't respect them now, like so many years after, like why haven't we grown as people and as a government? And why are we still fighting them for what is rightfully theirs? So right here in the photos, you'll see them protesting peacefully, standing with their people, and then the military was called in to stop them, to get off that land because they were gonna dig it and put the pipelines in. Effectively, the military went against their peaceful protest and responded with force. And in our next slide, we're going to show a video of that.
So this slide shows a little bit. It shows the pipeline reroutes, and it shows the map of the pipeline to give you more of a visual of what occurred during that time, and so that you can see that this was the protest site and where the pipeline was placed through the land.
There's some good comments in the chat. I'll just read it. A side fact is that pipeline has leaked into their water supply, and then also Dr. Logan says outside of Standing Rock, parts of the land was taken from the landowners by the federal government using eminent domain.
So for this part of the presentation, we're talking about Flint, Michigan, which I'm sure many people have heard of, and the water pollution that occurred there. In 2014, lead from water pipes began leaching into household water supplies. Lead has serious neurological effects, especially in developing children. Over 80 people developed Legionnaire's disease, which is basically, it affects the lungs, and it also just affects the whole body and can lead to nausea, vomiting, and can actually hospitalize a lot of people. It took over 2 years for this problem to be acknowledged and for safe water to be provided in water bottles for people in Flint, Michigan. It's kind of shocking the fact that there was such a slow response to this major crisis. This image that says the key problem shows the concentration of parts per million of fluoride in the water in Flint compared to Detroit. And you can see that it increases as you go farther in, and it talks about different areas of Flint, Michigan. It's a little hard to see, but high amounts of chloride is corrosive, and then it eats at the iron and the lead in the pipes, therefore infecting the water, and that is what caused the lead and the iron to be leached into the water supply.
And the lead that actually is leaked into the water, effectively what it does, it stops the neurotransmitters in the body, and it pretty much slows the person down, so they're not able to think at full capacity or perform everyday tasks like a normal person would because of the disease that was caused by their water.
And as according to the different areas, the highest water lead levels found was in predominantly African American communities. And by the end of 2017, less than half the pipes were replaced, but lead levels were still extremely high. Many people, including the mayor of Flint, felt that the slow response was triggered by systematic racism and the implicit bias within the justice system. One study published by the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health discovered that students who were exposed to this were less likely to attend schools. You want to go to... And then this next slide is talking about air pollution. So many schools in Massachusetts have a higher chronic absenteeism. Basically, it's more often for kids not to go to school in Massachusetts, especially here in Springfield. There is a positive correlation between greener space and a good academic performance, test scores, restored attention capacity, decreased stress levels, cognitive development, and reduced mental fatigue. You can definitely see it in this map. If you look where Springfield is in Massachusetts, you can see a lot more dark blue and light blue colors, which reflects a higher amount of absences. Because of the poor air quality, this has a direct relationship to different illnesses such as cardiovascular disease and reduced lung function and a poor cognitive function, and can then lead to poor health overall in everyone, including children. And then at the top, it says, what are particulates? And particulates, according to the Environmental Protection Agency, define particulates as a complex mixture of small particles and liquid droplets made up of different components such as nitrates, sulfates, organic chemicals, metals, soil, or dust particles.
So this example is environmental racism in a Harrisburg, Manchester's neighborhood in Houston. And this community is 98% Hispanic, Latinx, and many fall below the poverty line. And this is a community made of 455 homes, so it's small. So people living in this community is surrounded by 21 toxic release inventory sites, 11 large quantity generators of hazardous waste, 4 facilities that treat, store, or dispose of hazardous waste, and 9 major discharges of air pollutants, and 8 major storm water discharging facilities. So there's a story behind this that I personally I can relate to, and is that the people living in this area are mainly Spanish speakers. For the people who know me, I grew up in Puerto Rico, was born and raised there, and English is my second language. Most of the time I'm speaking Spanish, and only when I have to speak English. So what happened in this community was that a lot of major industries and companies failed to translate paperwork in Spanish to these people. So they were signing the papers without knowing that they were allowing these people to do and construct toxic sites next to their homes. So imagine how would you feel if you're signing something and you don't know what it means. So I have a lot of feelings towards this because I go through this all the time because I have to translate important documents to my mom. And I feel angry because how can you do this to people? How can you allow this to happen? And that's where allies need to come in. And you need to be an accomplice, and you need to use your platform and advocate for those who need help and need your help as an individual and also collectively. Because you might think that, okay, me doing this, it might be small. But when we do it collectively, we can make change. And yeah, I just wanted to give you guys the story behind this and how it particularly relates to me. Yeah.
And now as we go on, we're discussing pollution in soil. This community is greatly affected by soil pollution. South side of Chicago, and it's just 97% African American, and most of their public housing is developed on toxic waste dumping grounds, and they continue to have effects on their body and long-term effects with cancer and things like that due to the exposure to different toxic chemicals that they're exposed to. This is talking about soil pollution in West Jefferson, Alabama. There are issues with odor and flies, spilling of dark fluid in landfills, and there are over 173 operational landfills in this area. And this community is 90% African Americans. And many people are leaving their homes due to the soil pollution because of the effect it has had on them. In April 2017, a group of the residents claimed that Alabama's tolerance of the Stones Throw landfill had caused chronic illness such as asthma and cancer. So it clearly is greatly affecting the community, and it is a predominantly Black community that is being affected by these landfills and by this soil pollution that is not being regulated or handled properly, and it is having detrimental effects on people's health as a whole.
I just wanted to briefly add that there's videos about this, and one of the videos, one person was saying that the odor, it's so bad that she was thinking about moving. So again, here's another example. How would you feel if you would have to move your home and where you live because the smell is too bad for you to be there? So again, if you guys can think about this and meditate and think about how privileged you are right now because you live in a place where you don't have to deal with a bad smell bothering you.
Obviously, another problem across the globe that many of us are aware of is the fact that sea levels are rising. And according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, with continued ocean and atmospheric warming, sea levels will likely rise for many centuries at rates higher than that of the current century. So we all hear about this, and I feel like we've heard about this a lot throughout our lives, but we don't realize the effect it is having. And the Marshall Islands, which you can see in this image on this slide, is located in the Central Pacific Ocean, faces regular flooding, and sea level rise could make the island uninhabitable by 2050. So this is somebody's home. This is a community, and because of the sea level rising, they could be completely pushed out, and their island, their home, their culture, everything can be flooded over. And these people are the people who are affected by it, but yet they're not the ones creating this high level of pollution that is causing this issue, but they're the ones who are feeling the effect of it.
So also there's a lot of history that occur on the Marshall Islands. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but the military used these islands as a lab. They used to test nuclear bombs in this area, and one of the there's many islands here, as you guys can see, but each island has their own traditions and their own culture. So there was an island, the name is Bikini, that the people from this island had to move because the radiation was so high that they couldn't live there anymore. And this is something that the United States did. Of course, there's a lot of politics involved in this, and there was a lot of repercussions about it. But now they're gonna have to move again because of climate change. And United States, it doesn't have the largest population, but we produce a large amount of waste. So maybe not directly or directly, we're contributing and causing them to have to move. So they're going to be suffering a second cultural shock. So they're going to have to move again, find another place to live, because we haven't done anything that will change, that will cause change. But yeah.
Also, financially speaking, it's not as if they're getting any help financially or getting any help to be able to do this moving and relocating. They're just required to do it on their own. And it's because their lives are at risk, their health, their lives, everything. And so they're being forced out with no help whatsoever. And they shouldn't have to be forced out anyways. But they're putting people in a very hard situation through our pollution and the rise in sea level.
All right, so you heard all this information, and now you're probably thinking, like, what can I do in my life to change or slowly try to change what the state of the world is currently in? So one thing we can all do, whenever you shower, take shorter showers. For every 1 minute you're in the shower, you're using 2.5 gallons of water. And not only are you using that much water, but you're also using so much energy to heat the water. Because I doubt many of us take cold showers. As well as that, what we can do, start to conserve the amount of energy and electricity you use at home. I know that there are appliances that obviously will use higher amounts of electricity, but I know that in most of Massachusetts and Rhode Island, National Grid, if you were to buy new appliances that are energy efficient, they will offer you a refund for money. So, like, yeah, sure, you're putting money out, but it's also gonna benefit you and the entire the globe in the long run. So, like, small changes like this, as well as limiting your driving. So if you're going out to the grocery store, make sure you make lists and buy everything you need. So you don't have to go out, run out again to get things. The less we drive, which as Americans, that's pretty much all we do every single day. Usually people are driving somewhere. We can start to limit the amount of emissions we release into the air. Another thing is to check your actual vehicles that you're using and make sure that there's no leaks in them, as well as the tire pressure is correct. Because if you guys didn't know, if you do have lower tire pressure, you can actually be using more gas than needed. So, like, these basic things can keep us in check. But guys, this Tuesday, it's election day. Everyone needs to get out there and vote, because this upcoming election, people should be voting like our lives depend on it. Like, it's major. And if people aren't out there voting, whether it's in person, early voting, mail-in ballot, whatever it is, as long as you're doing it, it will help make change and try to open the eyes of people that are in our government, whether it's city, state, or federal. So please get out there and do it.
Also related to environmental justice, another thing that we could all do is educate ourselves. I feel like even with this presentation, you all now have a little bit of knowledge, or just more knowledge about the topic that you can share with others. There are professors in our audience, there's staff members in our audience, there's students. So for example, I'm a student leader, so I can use my voice and share this information to somebody else and share with someone who doesn't know about this. We can go out there and protest. We can do programs like this to educate other students. And there's many things that we could do, but if you don't know with what to start by educating yourself and use your platform, use your voice. Like I said, there are professors here. You communicate with your students a lot of time. So communicate and talk to your students about environmental justice. Talk to them about in which ways we could do better as individuals and as a community. You as a student, if you're a science major, you're learning about, you probably have heard climate change and learn about this. Share your knowledge with your friends. There's moms, dads, cousins in this call that can share the information with their friends and family as well. So I've been talking a lot about individual and collectively doing things because that's how this is how it works. That's how change works. So I encourage everyone to use their platform and to use your voice to do good for others and to advocate for those who need the most. Also, if any of you would like to add anything about how you particularly want to do change and what can you do as an individual, feel free to mute yourself and talk about this and give and share your knowledge and opinions.
Hi, this is Paris. By the way, you guys are doing an amazing job. I really enjoyed your presentation. Personally, what I do to lessen my carbon footprint, not too long ago, I changed my diet to pescatarian, and eventually I plan on becoming vegan because one of the main things that contributes to pollution is like meat production and meat farming, and some people they don't know that affects our environment. So I think that would be a good way of lessening your carbon footprint and being healthier as an individual.
Thank you, Paris. Would anybody else want to share?
Work for you, Daddy.
I think taking public transportation, or like I started to bike ride over the summer a little bit more downtown instead of, driving. Those are some small steps that people can take, like utilizing public transportation or we used to call it ankle express, take a walk.
I can't see the chat, but Danielle, would you mind helping me with that?
Yeah, so they brought up again, like Sharice brought up, like meat farming and how it's another segregated area, and how there's dangerous working conditions that come with it and permitted by racism, which is usually those who don't want to do the jobs that have to be done are people that are from minority groups. Like I know one firsthand that my mother is a general manager of a plastics company in Providence, and pretty much her entire workforce are people from south of the border. So people from Mexico, Guatemala. So her whole, like, everyone is speaking Spanish. And it's people that don't want to do that work. And people say that there aren't jobs available, but there are. It's just people that aren't going out there to find them. So another comment was in here. Lisa said, a really good Netflix film is Kiss the Ground. So I guess that's something to look into watching. And Dr. Logan said, the entire food system has issues. Consider the conditions of those who harvest fruits and vegetables. That also brings up the point of the forest fires right now that are happening in California, that have been continuing happening. The people that are picking our fruits and vegetables happen to be people of color. And they're working through the smoke inhalation and still getting our food. So, like, yeah, the food is here at Cheney Foods at your grocery store that you're picking up, but you ever think about where the food's coming from and who's actually doing the work to get it?
Actually, personally, one of my very first jobs, I was only 15, and I was working, and I was getting paid under the table at a farm, and I was sent into the fields to pick strawberries all day for 12 hours. And it was me and a family of migrant workers, including a young boy who was probably only 11. And we were sent out into the fields, and we were not provided any water, and we were told to just pick the strawberries all day for over 12 hours. And I ended up with sun poisoning and everything like that. And I had the privilege where I was able to work there for 2 weeks, get the money that I needed to go on a mission trip and volunteer in a different community. And then I was able to quit. But that family and that poor boy who I still think about did not have that ability or the able to leave that system that he was in. And so eventually, that, thanks to a couple of people that I talked to, that farm got reported for the way they were treating their workers and everything. But it still was completely unfair to those people.
Also in the chat, Dr. Susan Joel says most labor laws don't apply to farm workers.
That includes protection from chemicals, right? If you're thinking about crop dusting or laying pesticides, there's no rules about whether workers can be working in the fields or not. There's no requirements for toileting or water. And I was just recently reading a story about how, as part of the pandemic, they are in certain parts of the country where migrant workers are still working, they are basically keeping them imprisoned on farms as a way of not, supposedly controlling the virus. So they can't go to the grocery store, they can't go to CVS, they can't go anywhere. They're just stuck at work.
Something else that was brought up in the chat. Well, first, thank you for that. And another thing that was brought up was from David, and it was, do people realize that there is a natural gas pipeline that runs through the neighborhood here and through campus? There are a few in the city and significant industrial sites all around Springfield, which is something that I don't feel like a lot of people are aware of. And the level of pollution here in Springfield, like as a whole, and how high it is, especially the air pollution. I was actually discussing this with some of my coworkers at Duncan here on campus today, and how high the air pollution is and the effect it has on health as a whole. And I've noticed since coming here, my 4 years, an effect on my breathing and the lung conditions I get. I got bronchitis and pneumonia for the first time ever my freshman year of college here. And now I might have asthma, like undiagnosed asthma. They're figuring it out. And I did not experience any of that until actually coming to school here. And that's the severity of the air pollution.
And I'm not sure if most people know this, but Springfield actually has some of the highest asthma rates of the entire country. So that shows that the air pollution here is real and is prevalent.
One of the workers at Duncan was talking about how her son, she has 4 kids, and 2 of them all have really bad asthma.
There's another in the chat, says a good number of municipalities, okay, I can't talk today, will authorize less parks and green spaces and more non-residential building in urban sections of the cities. There's also Western Mass Asthma Coalition, is what I also read here. And Sharice, that's it.
So obviously, there are a lot of issues, and they need to be addressed. And there is major importance of mass action. So basically, at the individual level, it is important to maintain people by keeping people informed, keeping yourself informed, keeping updated on current issues, gaining access to resources to help combat environmental problems. Also, protests are important. Use your platform and voice to support the cause. And of course, as we all know, and Danielle already explained very well, we need to vote. We get to decide who the people are that represent us, and if we don't vote, people who are incapable of making positive change could end up in power, and people who will end up causing more detrimental issues. It's important that the people in power understand that environmental racism is an issue and that climate change is an issue, and the effect it is having on our country and on the world as a whole, and on especially on minorities in different communities and things like that. And they need to believe in science, and they need to do something to combat these issues. So it is important that we vote. Threats to environmental justice, policymaking, and law enforcement. People who hold power have economic stability and will have more protection because our society isn't equal. So they think it's okay to make certain policies and laws because it doesn't affect them directly, but it ends up affecting other people, and it's usually minority groups and stuff like that. And so these policies, basically there needs to be a lot of change done in order to try to end environmental racism and help with climate change and environmental issues in general, and just systematic issues in general here in the United States.
So going back to like what I said earlier, white people hold privilege and in where they live, which effectively leads to the minority groups such as Black people or Hispanics. They will more or less be in places where there are high levels of pollution. And no matter where these areas are, the pollution affects their overall living. And as I think someone said in the chat, that they're pretty much, they want to build more buildings for people to live rather than parks. And it shows that they're trying to cram more people into one city, which effectively will only make the air pollution rise. So taking that into account, you have to realize you're privileged if you are able to live in the outskirts of the suburban areas instead of a city. And if you look at all the studies that have been done, people of color, majority in the whole country, live in places where there are pollution. If you are white and if you're in this call right now, please listen to me right now. You need to take your privilege and voice what you're learning now and continue to educate yourself. If you don't, how's the world going to become a better place? How's the city around you going to become a better place? How's your family, your peers, everyone around you going to become better? If we don't share our knowledge, what effectively are we doing to help the future generations that come after us? And if we don't start to speak up and make change, there effectively won't be a habitable earth to live on. You need to realize your privilege and start voicing it. Don't wait, because time's ticking.
There's also another example that Dr. Robert Bullard talked about in one of his interviews, and is that he brought up an example of sorry for the background noise. So he brought up two different examples, one of a white male earning $10,000 a year and an African-American male making from $50,000 to $60,000 a year. And he mentioned that for a white male making $10,000 a year, he's more likely to move out of his neighborhood and get into a middle-class neighborhood. In comparison with an African-American male earning that amount of money, he's less likely to move out of his neighborhood. And one of the things that he said is that systemic oppression and racism doesn't allow marginalized groups to grow and prosper. We have limits, which is not fair. So all of us, yeah, we can get good jobs, but it's hard. It's harder because we have to face a lot of problems and issues because of the color of our skin. So if you are white, you're gonna have that privilege over me because I'm a person of color. So this is just another example where America is segregated. We cannot prosper and grow at the same pace as other people because of the color of our skin and where we came from. So to conclude, this is a picture of Dr. Robert Bullard webpage. A lot of the information that we share with you all comes from there. I encourage everyone to look at it. It's great. There's a lot of articles to read about. There's videos, there's books, and yeah, if you want to learn more about it, I can also send the PowerPoint that I have right now with you all. You can share this with your class friends, with anybody. I'll be happy to send it to anybody. So
Nathalie, you don't even have to do that. We'll take it and we're going to upload all the resources. So you don't have to send it to anyone. You've been doing, you all, Danielle, Willow, Nathalie, amazing jobs. Dr. Fowler, thank you. All the resources will be shared along with the recorded session of this. So don't even worry about that. We got you.
And also I wanted to have, if any of you have any opinions they want to share on what they learned and their own experiences with environmental racism or racism in general, you're more than welcome to. So now we have a couple of minutes to talk about this, so please share. And yeah.
There's a lot of thank yous in the chat to you all. Great job. Any more questions for our presenters? Someone said y'all crushed this presentation. I agree, y'all rock.
Also, if you're taking anything away from this presentation, please take away that, especially if you're white, that you have privilege and that environmental racism is a thing and that you need to do something about it. And no matter, just by being here and educating yourself is a step, but there are more steps after this that need to be taken.
Also, thank you all for coming and supporting us. This is an important topic.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Don't forget to fill out the evaluation so that, next we want to continue this, institutionalize this, and your feedback is really helpful. So please complete the evaluations. You can do it now or later, but the link is in the chat. And let's just you can use your reactions, a warm applause to our panelists, our presenters. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming. Again, thank you all for supporting.
Take a break for mommy. Oh.
I love Zoom.
People irk me.
There's one more presentation this evening with Dr. Morgan, Michelle Sina, fostering inclusion and others. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. I know it's fostering inclusion of the LGBTQ individuals in athletics. Or yes, that's it, right? I got
Yep,
it.
starting in 4 minutes.
So thank you all again, and